Just for today, everything's okay, everything's okay. Never comes again, another day like yesterday. Just for today, everything's okay, everything's okay.
Good morning, everybody. I'm trying something mildly different. Last episode, I noted that as I was banging the desk, you can't really hear it when you listen over a Mac or over your phone, but when I was listening on a legit sound system, this big boomy bass was coming through, and so I realized that depending on what environment you're listening in, some of the sounds that I make as I bump the desk that the mic stand is sitting on are creating problems in the audio. So this is an SM7B. It's a very standard, it's a great mic for men's voices. It's a pretty standard recording or mic or mic for spoken word. But anyway, it has a function on the back where you can click this down and it rolls off the low end. So I did that, rolled off the low end, and we'll see if that cleans up the sound a little bit. The other one's a mid boost, in case you want a little bit more grit and presence in the mid. Well, we'll see how that works. So I'm thinking in the back of my head as I explain that to you, I realize that that's probably not interesting or important at all. But I'm sort of thinking how I'm going to go about this one, because this is one. Look, I've cobbled together my thoughts on consciousness. I've done episodes where I talk through consciousness, where I've spent decades thinking about what consciousness is, what you can examine about it, what it means. And there are some logical limitations. And I won't go through all of that, but essentially it boils down to if you want to remain in the sense of sense and logic, within the realm of sense and logic and reason, consciousness by definition notices, right? You can't say, well, I'm conscious, but I don't notice anything. Well, by definition, to be conscious is to be aware. So consciousness is awareness. I won't go into it, but if you investigate language, how language is used, it's logically impossible to say language and meaning, making of meaning could exist in the absence of consciousness. That doesn't track. It's not possible. So that suggests that meaning is created of consciousness. Consciousness creates meaning, or consciousness is meaning, right? Something in that neighborhood. And then choice inheres in consciousness, because if you are not aware and you can't notice that one thing is not the other thing, or see what a thing is, there's no way to make a choice, right? If someone is when a rock is entirely unconscious and something hits it and it rolls, it's not like it chose to move. It's not like it chooses how to experience rolling. It's just physics. There's no meaning in it, right? And so we come back to choice and meaning inhere in consciousness or awareness. So rather than go back through all of that, I'm starting there. And I was thinking about something this weekend. Good grief. My brain is so mushy that I just forgot what my starting point was. Let me open it. In the presence of consciousness, and things that are unhealthy for you cannot continue. I remember. Okay. So what I was thinking and what I recorded there was that I think that things that are unhealthy for you cannot exist. They instantly dissipate in the presence of conscious awareness. Things that are unhealthy for you, things that are destructive for you, that are things that block you, things, right, belief systems that don't serve you or don't align with you, cannot remain in the presence of consciousness and things that are healthy for you are strengthened and express more profoundly and deeply in the presence of consciousness. When you become conscious, when you become consciously aware, things that are good for you become irresistible. You're not able to choose otherwise, which is ironic, right? Because consciousness is about choice. But I think reasonably you will choose the things that are healthy for you, that are good for you, that align with joy and happiness and health and peace and kindness and love. Because why would you choose something else? And things that are unhealthy for you can only exist in the presence of unconsciousness. And if you think about the structure of what consciousness is, so this is why I hesitated to do this, because it's not totally clear in my mind. It is, but it's not clear how to explain it. Consciousness creates meaning, and being aware is what makes choice part of consciousness, right? Because you have to be aware to choose. If you're not aware, you're not choosing. And to not choose is to reflect that I'm in an unconscious state. So if something is unhealthy for me, then I can make the assumption logically that for it to have power, for the unhealthy thing to seem to have power and presence and meaning, is an indication that I'm unconscious or I'm unaware of it. And the reason I say this, so here let me come to what I'm actually saying. The reason I say this is because let's say it's a belief system that's not actually true. It's an illusion, right? It's not true of me. Let's say I believe that my presence is unwanted or is not good. My presence is not a good thing on the face of the planet or in reality, which is not true of anybody. The only way that program can run and mute me and reduce me and make me appear to be an unhealthy thing on the presence of the planet is I have to be unaware of that program running. Because the moment I become aware of this program running that is not true or not reflective of me, it's doing an unhealthy thing to me, what really happens is my awareness becomes aware that there is something not me trying to define me and limit me, what I actually am. Right? So what I actually am is a gift to myself. I'm aware, I'm present. This is a gift to reality, right? This is a beautiful, joyous thing. Anything that doesn't align with that, that tries to eliminate that or tries to reduce that, has to be an illusion because it's denying what's true. And for the illusion to stand, there's no way possible that I can actually be directing my awareness at the illusion, because the moment my awareness, the illusion comes into my awareness, the illusion dissipates, because to be aware, by definition, is to not be deluded. Okay, so maybe I'm saying it better now. It gets difficult to talk about because it's by matter of definition. If I am aware, an illusion cannot stand in my presence because I can only be aware of what's true. And if I see a program running that's untrue, I'm aware that it's not true. A thing that is not true doesn't exist by definition. So a thing that is not true cannot continue to pretend to be true in the presence of a conscious awareness, because conscious awareness has to be aware of what is true, right? And if it looks at what's not true, it knows that it's not true. And by definition, not being true is a thing that doesn't exist. So at the moment awareness looks at it, it ceases to exist. Right? Like you start talking in circles because it's almost not almost, I think it's a priori knowledge. You can't use the physical world to confirm the logic of this. There's an inner knowing that this is inescapable by definition. Okay, so let me do it again. Something that is untrue, things that are unhealthy are untrue. They are programs or beliefs or constructions that pretend that we're limited, that pretend that we're small, that pretend that we deserve shame, that we deserve to be abused or limited, or that we are not what we are, which is conscious awareness, which has freedom, which has choice, which has the ability to create, the ability to notice, the ability, right? Okay, so for an untrue thing to pretend that it's true requires that there is no conscious awareness on it. Because if I were to take conscious awareness and direct it to something that's untrue, for conscious awareness to believe that that an untrue thing is true, by definition says it is not conscious. The awareness is not aware. The awareness is not awareing. The consciousness is not consciousning. You get it? How this is a priori knowledge. It becomes indefinable by language. And a thing that is unhealthy for you, something that diminishes you, something that hurts you, right? As a therapist, people come in, they have many beliefs about them, developed from society or from their experiences or from unhealthy parents and unhealthy messages, blah, blah, about who they are as an identity. And like 99.9% of everything people deal with in therapy really is about what they believe about themselves, and what they believe about themselves is not true. I've said many times, as a complex trauma therapist who deals with significant and long-term childhood trauma, it became a very important observation for me to realize that as people healed in my presence, not once ever did someone heal and come to that place of peace and acceptance of what they had lived and what was true about them and go, oh my God, I can't believe it. All this time I wanted to believe that I was a good person, and I realize now that I stopped struggling, I'm really just a piece of shit. Not once ever. And I don't mean that they became egotistical and were like, oh my God, I thought I was a piece of shit, but I'm fucking amazing. Like, society should worship at my feet and I should be president. Like, no. That's a sign of a wounded ego, someone running a negative, unhealthy belief program about themselves, trying to counteract the belief system by constructing some bullshit that makes them superior to other people. I don't mean that. I don't mean narcissism. I mean, when people come to a healed place, and they feel at peace, they realize there's no reason to feel ashamed of themselves in any way, shape, or form, that there's nothing shameful about them, that they are free of judgment, their own and other people's, right? And so you go, why is it that the things that hurt us that are unhealthy are always things that are untrue? They're untrue. No one ever goes, oh, this is unhealthy about me, but it's true. I healed and I realized, oh, this is true. Now, I know some of you are going to go, no, that's not true. Let's say some person is a narcissistic piece of crap and they abuse everyone around them and they have a severe addiction problem and blah, blah, and they're totally in denial and they lie about it and they're like, everything is somebody else's fault and it's not me and I don't do anything and why is my wife angry at me, blah, blah. And they could heal and go, oh, I'm the problem. I'm an alcoholic. I have an alcohol problem. I'm very narcissistic. I'm very self-centered, right? So at one level you could go, oh, no, like they realize some stuff. That's a painful realization. No. What you need to understand about that is the selfishness, the narcissism, the denial, the refusal to take accountability, the drinking are not what's wrong with that person. that person does all of those things to avoid the fact that they do believe something terrible and shameful about themselves. They feel terribly ashamed of themselves, and so they refuse to ever take accountability for anything. So the thing that's unhealthy, those are unhealthy outward behaviors that are not good for them and that hurt themselves and other people. But the actual really deeply unhealthy thing is that they believe something about themselves that's not true, that they do feel ashamed, that they do feel like a piece of crap. And all those behaviors are trying to escape feeling like a piece of crap. So this does not negate the point that I'm making, that things that are bad for us are always untrue. When you get under the hood, when you get under the compensating behaviors, the coping mechanisms, the addictions, the ADHD, the obsessive compulsive behaviors, the perfectionism, the self-sabotage, the arrogant superior attitude, the condescension to other people, all of these behaviors are an attempt to compensate for the fact that that person believes something really bad about themselves and they feel terribly ashamed and they can't deal with it. So they have all of these compensating behaviors. So if you're saying, hey, those people do need to admit that they have these unhealthy behaviors, you're one level up from the truth, or you're 2 or 3 levels up from the truth. Those are just compensating behaviors for the unhealthy, untrue thing. Right? So what I'm asserting to you is that they have a belief about themselves that's not good for them, and beliefs about ourselves that are not good for us are always untrue. They're never true. They're never true. I'm not saying this spiritually, I'm telling you as a therapist. When people come into therapy, they're always dealing with things that they believe about themselves that are not true, and they're not good things. By definition, people don't come into therapy and go, I feel at peace with myself, and I feel very forgiving of any foibles and mistakes I've made, and I really enjoy being loving with myself and loving with other people, and so I've come to therapy to fix this. What the fuck are you talking about? Nobody does that. We come to therapy because we believe terrible things about ourselves. And when we heal, we realize that those things were not true. Okay? So let's come back to the point. What I was saying in the voice note, what I'm saying is things that are unhealthy for us are things that are not true. And things that are not true cannot, by definition, cannot exist in the presence of awareness. Because awareness is only aware of what's true. And when it looks at a thing that's not true, it knows that it's not true. And by definition, a thing that is not true is not real. Right? Like, it's not. You can talk in circles and act like it's complicated, but the truth is it's so simple and so a priori that it's difficult to wrap language around it and construct an explanation. A thing that is not true doesn't exist. Things that are not true don't exist. If you're generally a nice person and someone who really means you ill starts telling people, hey, this person is a jerk and they're horrible and they seem really nice, but they're actually really selfish and they gossip about people all the time and you have to be careful with them. That's not true. People believing it's true can result in hurtful external situations and circumstances. Right? Maybe people could deny you a job or... But here's the thing. When someone believes something about you that's not true, they are existing in a state of unconsciousness. Because the only way it's possible for them to accept something that's not true is to reflect that they are not conscious in some significant aspect of themselves. They're not conscious, because if they were conscious beings and they experienced the truth of you, A, they would either go, I don't experience that with that person, and they would not allow themselves to be influenced, or B, they would withhold judgment and go, this person says that this person's a really bad person. I don't experience them that way. I'm just going to keep interacting with them and I'm going to find out what's true. That is evidence of their consciousness. Now, here's where this is important. People who are not conscious, who will believe lies about you, are not good for you anyway. So people who are like, oh my God, like, sometimes people will be like, oh, this person was such a toxic narcissist, and, they destroyed my entire situation, and they went to all my friends and they said these things about me that were not true, and all of my friends turned their back on me, and blah, blah, blah. This is a very unconscious complaint. Because let's start with the assumption this person is a good person, and what's being said about them is unfair. This means a couple things. If everyone around them knew them, was friends with them for years, interacted with them, and then suddenly a toxic narcissist could just plant some negative idea and poison all their friends, what kind of friends did you choose? None of those people are good people. Well, by my own definition, they are good people, but they're unconscious. So what you're saying is, I've chosen entirely unconscious people who are unaware of what's true, and I've pretended that they're my friend. How can they be your friend? They don't even see you. They don't even know you. So what that means is you've been unconscious all these years, pretending that these people see you and know you when they don't. So all that got reflected was that you're unconscious because you are pretending that people who don't actually see you and don't actually know you are your good friends who know you, and that you know them. No, you don't know them. You didn't know them either. You're accusing them of not knowing you and turning their back on you, but you didn't know them because they were always that unconscious. Guys, you see how simple it is? And it's frustrating. I know it's frustrating. I am that person. So I'm not judging you, right? I am that person who surrounded myself with many, many people who, when I say don't see me, I don't mean like it's people's job to understand. I have lots of very good, loving, kind friends who don't know everything about, like, it's not people's job to be immersed in your reality. But I mean people who had no fucking clue who I was, no matter how long we'd known each other. I was just some function in their daydream or their nightmare of whatever their life was. And as long as I served that function, I was their best friend or their close friend, or they knew me or they were close to me. Like, they didn't know anything about me. And in fact, I couldn't talk about anything or explain anything that I experienced. Certainly not about them at all, ever, but not about other, like, they didn't know me, right? And so I am that person, right? If I sat there and complained and went like, oh, they're so unconscious and they're so full of crap and they don't, see me, they don't know me, and, they say things about me that are not true, and it affects these other people, and then they think these things about me. Like, what am I saying? What I'm saying is I've pretended to be friends with people who were not my friend, which means I don't see them either. I don't see them either. I can accuse these people of not seeing me, and it's true. They don't. They don't see me, but I don't see them either because I'm pretending that they see me. And I'm pretending that there's a friendship, and I'm pretending, right? I didn't see who they were. They might be pretending I'm a bad person, and I'm pretending they're a good person. When I say bad and good, I don't mean anyone's inherently bad or good, but they're behaving in a conscious or unconscious way. Right? So let's bring it back. what's I was making the point that something that's untrue can't hurt you unless you were unconscious. So it's your unconsciousness that hurts you, right? So again, in those situations where it's like, oh man, this narcissist came in and they started lying about me and, blah, blah. I mean, this is something that I'm sort of like working on letting go of and realizing now, right, is my mother, who is an out and out sociopath, who manipulated my father and my siblings and convinced them of things, right? When I confronted her about molestation and like some really significant child abuse that I experienced, she immediately started manipulating my nieces and nephews and my brothers and sisters and blah, blah, and it resulted in my brothers and sisters and I not speaking for like 15 years, right? And I can accuse my mother, and she's responsible for being willing to do that. But the truth is my brothers and sisters were willing to believe her. They were willing to believe her, right? Which reflects a lack of consciousness of who I am, right? Which reflects a lack of an ability to go, oh, John would never do that to mom, the accusations that she made. He wouldn't lie about these things. He wouldn't, I assume that she, in one case, when I asked her on the phone, what happened? Why did this happen? And I asked it in just this tone of exploration of like, how did this happen? She pulled this move where she collapsed on the other end of the phone, sobbing, how could you say such things? And what she had done was like horrific, right? She's responsible for, at the very least, like explaining like how a parent could have done that to a child. And there was a family member who was furious with me and basically rejected me because she collapsed sobbing as if I had screamed at her and cussed her out and, blah, blah, blah. I can hold her responsible, but those people are responsible for believing her. And the fact that they believe her means they don't know me at all. Now, I'm a horrible person in ways. I'm not saying that I'm an innocent victim in every so. I'm not. I'm just a human. But in that situation, that was like a raging disconnect from who I am as a person. I never attacked my mother or accused or called her names or like anything. I tried to address with her in a kind and understanding way things that she had done, and she would respond with these huge, dramatic collapses that would communicate to my nieces and nephews and to my brothers and sisters that I must have said some horrific, terrible, out of control thing and called her name, and it literally had never happened, not once ever. Okay, so come back to the point. If you're the person, so I can be like, oh, they're unconscious, they're not aware of who I am. Well, I'm also not aware of who they are. I'm not letting them be who they are. Right? They're people who rescued themselves by allowing themselves to believe something that's a lie, but I'm also believing a lie. The whole thing is a lie, which is typical, which is clinically, that's how it works when you have a family system organized around a toxic narcissist or a sociopath. Everybody's lying, and I'm lying, including me. So to bring it back to a thing that's not true can't hurt you unless you're being unconscious and animating it. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't external examples, right? External outcomes. So if you're really a good person and a good employee and very smart and good at your job, and a toxic narcissist sabotages you at a company that you're trying to get a job at, yes, there are actual consequences in the four-dimensional world that can hurt you. That's not what I mean. But what I mean is that identity and that shame and that struggle can only reflect my own unconsciousness. It can only remain animated and damage me as long as I'm unconscious. So we're coming back to the original equation that things that are untrue cannot exist in the presence of consciousness, right? So let's say I have a friend at a company and I'm like, hey, could you set up an interview and blah, blah, blah. But they're actually really narcissistic and they sabotage it and they talk in a condescending way to the person who's going to interview me and I actually don't get the job. I get hurt because I'm pretending that that friend is someone that they're not. And they're talking about me as if I'm someone that I'm not. And those things only remain animated and hurtful because I'm unconscious and they're being unconscious. Right? If I turned my conscious awareness on that friend and knew them for what they are, I would never have submitted myself to that situation. Right? Because the illusion of a good friendship with fidelity in it is an illusion. It hurts me when it explodes and I get betrayed. Right? You can't be betrayed by something that you know what it is. If a volcano is erupting and I climb up by the side of the volcano and I get severely burnt with lava, I'm not betrayed. I'm just being an idiot. I know what the thing is. And I would not choose to do that. My conscious awareness would be like, I'm aware of, I'm not going to do that. Right? We get hurt, we suffer when I'm pretending that an erupting volcano is a grassy, beautiful meadow, and I go and take a nap in it, and then suddenly I'm like terrified and hurt because the lava is running around me, and I'm getting horribly burnt, and I'm like, how could this happen? How could this happen? Well, it happened because I was pretending something untrue was true. And the moment I bring my conscious awareness as the situation, it's like, well, it's simply not true. The illusion is untrue. So it doesn't mean that there can't be something external to you that's bad for you. But you get hurt by those things because you're pretending that something is that's untrue is true. And the moment you bring your conscious awareness to it, the illusion evaporates and it can no longer hurt you because now you can do what consciousness does, which is to make choices. Make conscious choices to deal with that situation. So let's come back to the original equation. Things that are bad for you are only untrue. And untrue things evaporate the moment conscious awareness is on it. Because conscious awareness is aware of what's true. And when a thing is untrue, it doesn't exist. Untrue things don't exist. A lie about me can exist, right? The lies that my mother told and the way she's behaved that communicated to my brothers and sisters and my nieces and nephews that I had behaved a certain way with her, those things were lies. The lie existed, but people had to be unconscious of who I was for the lie to pretend that it was a real thing. And I had to be offended by that behavior, right? It's just untrue. It simply doesn't exist. It didn't exist as a reality. And then I had to pretend that people knew me who didn't know me. Right? I had to pretend that they knew me. They didn't. So I was trying to make something. I was trying to animate something. And so the thing I was animating is what made me sick. If I had simply dealt, that doesn't mean that the truth isn't painful. It was painful to me that my brothers and sisters didn't know me or would believe something about me that was untrue. But what hurt me was I was pretending that they were the kind of people who would know what was true, or not pretend something untrue about me, right? And I do the same, right? I believe things about people that are untrue, that are hurtful of them. So again, this is not, it's not about judging people. I do the same. It is coming back to the equation that things that are unhealthy for you are untrue. And as soon as conscious awareness is present, they no longer hurt you. They're no longer unhealthy, because things that are untrue don't exist. By definition, being untrue is to not exist as a truth, as a reality. Right? Things that are healthy for you are only things that are true. And you can experience this in real time. When you realize something about you, it only expands you and makes you stronger if it's true. Because conscious awareness can only be aware of what's true. And when it sees a thing that's untrue, it knows that it does not exist. And when it sees a thing that's true, it knows that it's real. And real things never hurt you. Real things never hurt you. Pardon me. Real things never hurt you. They expand you. They reflect more beauty about you. They empower you. They give you the freedom to make choices and to act and interact and to create, which is what consciousness does. So let's make it even simpler. What's healthy for you are things that confirm, acknowledge, and invite the exercise of conscious awareness. Because they're true. Things that are unhealthy for you are things that limit, obscure, or animate lies about you. And the moment you turn your conscious awareness on them, by definition, you're like, they're untrue, so they don't exist. How can something that doesn't exist hurt you unless you animate it and pretend it's true? Right? So healthy things, unhealthy things are never true and cannot stand in the presence of conscious awareness. And healthy things are the only things that are true and confirm and expand your awareness of your conscious awareness. Okay, so I'll close with this. You notice how the language keeps coming back to things that are true are healthy. Things that are true are conscious awareness, right? Expand conscious awareness, allow conscious awareness to express, confirm conscious awareness. So things that are true are things that can stand in the presence of consciousness. Things that are not true cannot stand in the presence of consciousness. Things that are not true don't exist. Things that are true exist. Okay, so this is simple. This is the equation that tells you that consciousness is the only thing that exists. Consciousness is the only thing that exists. And quantum physics suggests, and spiritual systems will tell you, there's never been anything but consciousness. Everything that you see is a manifestation of consciousness. Consciousness invited it, animated it. And when it is a reflection of what consciousness is, which is joy, love, connection, creativity, choice, and freedom, it expands. Consciousness becomes further aware of itself. Consciousness is doing more of what it is. Consciousness is consciousness. There isn't anything but consciousness that exists. Therefore, it becomes aware of the expansiveness, the infiniteness of its own existence. things that don't exist are the only things that hurt you, but they only hurt you because you pretend that they exist. Okay? I don't know how, my brain is very foggy today. So I'll probably do another and maybe I'll get more clear, but that's the kernel of it, right? The original equation was things that are unhealthy are only untrue, and untrue things cannot stand in the presence of consciousness because consciousness knows that things that don't exist don't exist. Healthy things are things that are true, and things that are true expand consciousness, confirm consciousness, expand your freedom to choose and to express and to create, because there is only consciousness. There's nothing else to be done. Consciousness explores itself and becomes conscious that it is conscious. And that's the only healthy activity in the realm where, well, it's the only realm where consciousness is the only thing that exists. Okay? It gets deep. I'm not super clear, but that's what I wanted to say about that. For me, consciousness and spirituality is extremely logical and reasonable for these reasons, that when you talk it through, it becomes obvious and apparent. What consciousness is confirms itself, and logic and reason is inescapable. There's no way to get around it, and things that are not true destroy themselves and they evaporate. Logically, they evaporate. It becomes impossible to describe or talk about because it doesn't exist. Anyway, that's it for today. I love you guys. Talk to you next time. Take care.
Just for today, everything's okay, everything's okay.